Good evening and welcome to NTD UK News. I'm Stuart Leeson here, today's top stories. Surge testing begins in Canterbury as a precaution to prevent the spread of the Indian variant. House prices in the UK are hitting the highest point for 7 years. And both the French President and German Chancellor want to know the truth behind allegations that Denmark helped the US spy on the European leaders. Authorities in Canterbury are urging all asymptomatic people in 2 postcodes to undergo COVID tests. Local public health officials describe their approach to prevent the spread of the Indian variant as highly precautionary.
A targeted and enhanced testing programme has begun in Canterbury after a number of cases of the Indian strain of COVID-19 were found. The surge testing is targeting 2 postcodes in South Canterbury and will last for 2 weeks. Local public health officials say while the number of cases in the country was low, authorities were taking nothing for granted. They are calling for people over 12 without COVID symptoms to undergo a PCR test, regardless of their vaccination status. Those who live, work or study in the 2 postcodes are urged to do the test at one of 5 mobile units set up in the area. Those tested will not be expected to self-isolate while awaiting the outcome, Kent County Council said in a statement. According to government figures, Canterbury reported 46 new cases of COVID-19 in the week up to May the 26th. This is above the UK average. In South Canterbury, where the 2 targeted postcodes are, 14 new cases were reported, an increase of 100% on the week before. Local public health officials emphasise that they're taking a highly precautionary approach and are tackling outbreaks before they have a chance to spread. On May the 31st, the UK reported nearly 3,400 new cases of COVID-19, nearly 900 more than a week ago. The new cases are clustered in 3 regions in England: Bolton, Bedford and Kirklees.
Transport for London is to receive further government funding of over £1 billion. The 3rd emergency support package was part of a deal between Transport Secretary Grant Shapps and London Mayor Sadiq Khan. NTD's Neil Woodrow brings us the details.
Tuesday's announcement of further funding for London's transport operator is its 3rd support package since the pandemic hit. TFL have received over £4 billion from the government since the first lockdown in March 2020. As part of the deal, TFL Chair and London Mayor Sadiq Khan has agreed to conditions set by Transport Secretary Grant Shapps. These include delivering £300 million of savings and identifying sources of revenue for TFL of between £500 million and £1 billion each year. The government is also keen to push ahead with the first driverless trains on the tube. Shapps says by the time this funding ends in December, progress will be made towards the conversion of at least one London Underground line to full automation. Khan says TfL will object to any future requirement, forcing them to implement driverless trains on the London Underground. TfL is hoping passenger numbers increase as London bounces back from the pandemic. It says they are currently at 60% of pre-pandemic levels. Neil Woodrow, NTD News, Westminster, London.
The bank holiday turned out to be the warmest day of the year so far, with the sunshine continuing into Tuesday. Sunseekers flocked to the parks and beaches. Here's NTD's Jane Well with more.
Following weeks of rainy weather, people flocked to the beach and the park. Bank holiday Monday turned out to be the hottest day of the year so far.
Brighton Beach was popular as people lounged in the sunshine. A maximum temperature of 25.1 degrees Celsius was later recorded in Kinlochheugh, Scotland. Thunderstorms are expected in some areas early on Wednesday.
The outlook for the rest of the week is sunny, with a slight drop in temperature. Jane Werrell, NTD News, London.
Research by Nationwide Building Society suggests UK house prices are soaring to levels not seen for 7 years. NTD's Patrick Hayden brings us more on this.
House prices soared nearly 11% in the year to May, according to Nationwide Building Society. That's the highest level in 7 years. Nationwide's chief economist says buyers are in a race for space, looking for larger properties and homes with gardens. It says the average house price has gone up by nearly £24,000 to £234,000 over the last 12 months. It's been a U-turn from April 2020, when housing transactions dropped to a record low of 42,000. A record high of 183,000 transactions was then seen in March 2021. Nationwide's chief economist says the first stamp duty holiday that ran to March kept the market running. But he says it's not the key factor pushing up prices now. He says people have been reassessing their housing needs since the pandemic, and most people are looking to move to less urban areas. Patrick Hayden, NTD News, London.
The idea of powering your car by plugging it in rather than visiting the petrol pump may sound a lot cheaper. But research by British retailer Halfords suggests the savings may be less than expected.
Research by Halfords finds that electric car drivers are on average only £100 better off after 3 years than if they buy the fuel version. Although electric cars are on average 47% more expensive than fuel equivalents, some owners are likely to make a small saving because their running costs are lower. The study compares electric versions of popular cars with petrol or diesel versions, assuming an annual mileage of 10,000. The biggest saving is with BMW i3. Buying the electric version is over £4,000 more expensive than the petrol version, but after 3 years, drivers can save over £1,600 in running costs. An electric Mini Cooper Classic costs £10,000 more to buy than its petrol equivalent, but it costs £800 less to run after 3 years. The research finds not all electric cars will save you money. After 3 years, owners of an electric Peugeot 208 Allure or Vauxhall Corsa will have spent nearly £1,600 more than if they'd chosen fuel. The government plans to ban new petrol and diesel car sales from 2030. A recent survey by energy regulator Ofgem finds over a third of consumers say they are unlikely to get an electric vehicle in the next 5 years. 60% of them said the price of electric cars is too high.
Heinz Ketchup may be in the UK again, as its maker plans to invest £140 million to expand its factory in Wigan. Kraft Heinz says its plans to modernise the Kit Green plant, which is already the largest food manufacturing site in Europe. It will install new machinery and bring back production of tomato ketchup, mayonnaise and salad cream to meet the demand from a new generation of UK consumers. The move is expected to create about 50 full-time jobs at the site. It would be the company's biggest investment in an existing manufacturing site outside the US in over 20 years. The French President and German Chancellor are seeking clarity on allegations that Danish intelligence services helped the US spy on European leaders. They say this is not acceptable among allies.
Several European nations want Denmark to explain why its Foreign Secret Service allegedly helped the United States spy on European leaders, including German Chancellor Angela Merkel. France was one of the countries allegedly spied on. The French president said on Monday spying is not acceptable among allies.
I care about the relationship of confidence that unites Europeans and Americans, and we thus have to do everything in our power for our common security. There is no room for suspicion between us.
He said France and Germany are seeking full clarity on what happened. Danish state broadcaster DR reported on Sunday on an internal probe by the Danish Defence Intelligence Service from 2015. It showed Danes helped America's NSA eavesdrop on political leaders and officials in France, Germany, Sweden and Norway between 2012 and 2014. The NSA, or National Security Agency, is part of the US Department of Defense. The German Chancellor is no stranger to spying from the US. In 2013, reports that the NSA listened in on German government phones, including Merkel's, prompted a diplomatic spat between Berlin and Washington.
Our position in connection with the events of that time has not changed. We rely on trustful relationships, and what was right then is right now.
Sweden also demands answers, with Defence Minister Peter Hultqvist saying he wants to see all the cards on the table. The DR report says the NSA intercepted calls, texts and chat messages of officials in Denmark's neighbouring countries. The alleged setup between the US and Denmark allowed the NSA to obtain data by using the telephone numbers of politicians as search parameters. When questioned by DR, the Danish defence minister said the government cannot discuss intelligence matters. The NSA and the Office of the Director of National Intelligence declined to comment.
Poland's foreign minister flew to China over the weekend to meet with his Chinese counterpart. This low-key visit takes on a special significance for China. NTD Sharon Xu explains.
The meeting between the Chinese and Polish foreign ministers on Saturday came after the European Parliament recently voted to freeze discussions on the China investment agreement. Since this move, China has desperately tried to restart the discussions. Beijing wants the European Union on its side against the US. To China, losing EU support could accelerate China's isolation from the entire developed world. So, Chinese officials have been busy reaching out to EU members for help. But the response has been less than enthusiastic. According to Chinese media, Poland's foreign minister said that the EU-China investment agreement was the best option for both sides and that Poland will make active efforts for what they call the healthy development of EU-China relations. The Polish Ministry of Foreign Affairs, however, made no mention of this in its official statement. It simply said that the prospects of the EU-China cooperation were discussed. China also called on France for help. A Chinese Minister of Commerce said he had raised the request in a video conference call with the French Minister Delegate for Foreign Trade. Yet, the request was left out in the statement issued afterwards by the French government. France's reaction did not come as a surprise. Just a few weeks ago, the Chinese ambassador to France insulted their lawmakers and called a French researcher a small-time thug and a crazed hyena. This kind of rhetoric, sometimes known as wolf warrior diplomacy, is expected to soften as China continues to seek help to revive the agreement. Back to you, Stuart.
Still to come, the EU proposes fully vaccinated people should be exempt from testing or quarantine when travelling within the bloc. Then and more when we return.